Welcome to the Bettis Musgrove Show, the podcast where personal injury legal expertise meets real-world advice to empower and protect you. Join us as we delve into the critical aspects of personal injury cases, break down legal jargon into actionable insights, and share essential safety tips to help you navigate life's unexpected moments. And now, here are your hosts, Spencer Bettis and Ben Musgrove.
Well, good morning. Welcome to episode 7 of the Bettis Musgrove Show. As always, I'm your host, Ben Musgrove. This is my law partner, Spencer Bettis. Spencer and I own and operate a boutique law firm here in Cumming, Georgia, specializing in personal injury. We created this podcast several weeks ago to inform our clients as well as the general public just a little bit more about us, who we are, what we do, and do a deeper dive into personal injury law and what that looks like to hopefully help somebody in the off chance that they are involved in an injury-related event. And over the last few weeks, we've been talking about advocacy and what that looks like from a personal injury lawyer perspective. We thought we would continue on with that topic a little bit and get into more catastrophic injury claims and what those look like. And to do so, I brought in one of the foremost advocates that I know, a good friend of mine, and Scott Campbell. Scott is with the law firm Shiver, Hamilton Campbell. They've got an office down in the Atlanta Buckhead area as well as in St. Simons Island, Georgia. So Scott, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. In addition to being a personal injury lawyer, I can say Scott is a phenomenal golfer and an alpine snow skier. So I don't know which one of those you like on your resume first, but
I think I'm a better skier than golfer.
Okay, and then what about lawyer? Where does that rank?
I'd say I'm a better lawyer than I am golfer for sure.
Yeah.
And probably a better skier. You're also a pretty good skier.
I like it. Skiing is my thing. I enjoy doing it. But we brought Scott in. Like I said, he's a phenomenal trial lawyer. I'd say one of the best lawyers in the state, honestly. In the personal injury realm, we've had the privilege of working together several times on cases, and Scott deals specifically in catastrophic injury law. So, would love to get his take on what we're talking about today. So, Scott, why don't you tell us a little bit about you, where you came from, how you got here, that type of thing?
Sure. So I grew up in this area. I went to Milton High School, and then I went to Georgia for undergrad. Kind of decided relatively early in college that I wanted to stay in school for a little while, and that law was probably the path for me. Went to law school at Emory because I decided I was going to stay in state for my career, and I decided I'd go to what I thought was the best law school in the state. So I went to Emory and spent 3 years there, and then started practicing law in Atlanta, primarily initially doing medical malpractice defense.
Okay.
Went to a firm that basically, I knew I wanted to try cases. I didn't really know what kind of cases I wanted to try, but I knew I wanted to be in court. And at that point in time, knew a lot of lawyers say they try cases, but not a lot of lawyers do try cases. And so I went to a firm that specialized in medical malpractice defense because they told me you'll try more cases with us than anywhere else. And they did, because those cases try a lot. Because there's a personal dynamic when a doctor gets sued. So I did that for about 2 years, not quite 2 years, and I got recruited by a firm that was one of the largest firms in the world that was primarily defending medical device cases across the country. Did that for another 6 years, I guess, and then realized that with my young family at home, a job that required me to be all over the country wasn't conducive to the husband and father I wanted to be, and so decided to make a change. My partners, Jeff Shiver and Alan Hamilton, had already started the firm, and I had tremendous respect for them as lawyers and fathers and husbands, and just decided that a course change for me was what I needed to do. And went and joined them. And we've been practicing now together for more than a decade.
Awesome. And I know you guys do an awesome job. Like I said, specifically in the catastrophic injury realm. What can you talk about in terms of catastrophic injury and how that differs from what you were doing before you got into the personal injury realm?
Yeah, so we handle all types of cases with the one kind of common component is they're either serious catastrophic injuries or death.
Right.
And we specialize in that because those cases often take a lot more time and effort. And in order for us to dedicate the time and effort that's necessary to bring those cases justly forward through litigation and trial, you gotta jealously guard your time, frankly.
Yeah.
And so when I was on the defense side, I was doing a lot of catastrophic stuff on the defense end. A lot of the medical stuff I was defending, the product stuff I was defending was catastrophic. But I think the fundamental change for me that occurred, and one of the things that I think for me is so gratifying about what we all do, is getting to come alongside people.
Yeah.
You know, people that are often the lowest point in their lives, or family members who are grieving the loss of someone else, and they're just looking for answers and comfort, and someone, yes, to fight for them, but also someone to listen to them, someone to be there for them. And I think for me, when I shifted from the defense side to the plaintiff side, that was the change that for me was really a game changer. Because while I didn't have a philosophical problem with defending companies and all that, and certainly there's cases that need to be defended, end of the day, it didn't change the company if we win or lost. I remember spending 6 weeks trying a case in Portland, Oregon, and we won, and the company gave us a nice phone call. Thanks for doing that, and went on down their way.
Right.
Whereas, now when you try cases with families, it's something that's a seminal moment in their life.
Sure.
And when they trust you to fight for them and come alongside them, to me, it's just a feeling and a gratification that exists in our profession in doing that I don't think you see in a lot of professions.
Yeah. That's an awesome segue. So having worked on both sides of the V, so to speak, plaintiff side, defense side, you talked about some key differences there just in terms of the general feeling and the clients that you're representing. But also I'd like to know, what do you think, having seen both sides, makes an effective advocate on the personal injury side of the V? Or the plaintiff side of the V, I should say. Yeah,
I think there are some common traits you'll see on the folks that really, I think, effectively advocate for plaintiffs. I think the first thing is hard work. I mean, it's like any other job, right? I mean, there's people that coast through, and you can do that in any profession. But I think one of the things, both on the plaintiff and defense side, that separates the top tier lawyers is they're willing to spend the time and the effort to talk to the witnesses, look at the documents, and really prepare. And I think that's key. But I think the thing that's different on the plaintiff side is, like, when I think back to a lot of the verdicts that I've gotten, that I look at and I say, wow, that's there's sometimes you try a case, you get a good verdict, you're happy with it. There's sometimes you try a case and you get a verdict, you're like, wow, I didn't expect the jury to do that. And I think the common thing I see in those cases is cases where I really developed a relationship with the plaintiff or the plaintiff's family, such that they trusted me and they were able to be real with that jury. And the jury got to see them. I got to kind of get out of the way, right? And let the jury see them and know them. And I think if a jury that knows the plaintiff's family, and cares about them, as hard as that is to do in the confines of sort of a courtroom,
right,
gets motivated to act.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing that often gets overlooked is you got to develop that relationship with your client's family, so that if it gets to trial, they can feel comfortable that you're not going to put them in a position that they're not capable of handling.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that's important to keep in mind.
Do you think there's any one thing or handful of things that is effective in developing that relationship with clients?
I think time is essential. I think it's just got to be time after time. I think the other thing is, and you guys know this, in our profession, there's lawyers that have hundreds or thousands of clients. Right. And you've got to make a decision. Is that what you're going to be? And if that's what you're going to be, you're not going to be trying cases one, or at least significant cases, but you don't have time to develop a relationship. But my clients have my cell phone. They know me. They know my family. They may not have met my family, but they know about me, and I know about them. And I think ideally you want to have spent time sitting in their home, getting to know them, especially if it's a case where, I think back to one of the first cases I handled when I was a plaintiff's lawyer. It was a horrific case where this sweet old lady had been sexually assaulted in a hospital by an employee. And there were all sorts of challenges with the case as it relates to, coercion scope and vicarious liability. There's some bad law you have to overcome to really bring a case like that. But I remember driving to Augusta and sitting with this lady in her apartment, and she had all the windows drawn. I mean, it was pitch black in there. Yeah, she had given up on life, right? And it was so sad. I remember talking to Jeff and Alan, being like, legally, I'm not sure we can make this case work, but this lady has given up,
right?
And she needs us. And we decided, all right, well, let's fight for her. Let's see if we can make it. And we lost on appeal. We lost summary judgment at trial court, got it overturned at appeal, got it all the way to trial, and it resolved right before trial. But she was a woman over the course of the 5 or 6 years I knew her.
Yeah.
That went from having given up on life to, seeing, no, there's some hope for her, and there's some joy despite the circumstances she's been through. And I think that came out of the fact that I spent hours sitting with her, hours talking to her on the phone. And I just don't think there's any substitute for the time and the genuine investment in who your clients are and what they're going through and genuinely caring about it.
Yeah, I can speak to that too. I mean, I know some of the cases we worked together just in the past couple of years that some of the facts weren't ideal, but you sat down, met with the client, got to know them, and then push those cases forward, and ultimately we were able to resolve all of them, I think. So
yeah, and I genuinely enjoy that aspect of it. I mean, as you guys know, there's a lot of stuff in our world where like you got to fight and you got to be adversarial, but to me, it's when you get to develop that human relationship with someone who's really at a low point and looking for someone to lean on, it opens a part of our profession that I didn't even experience on the defense side, and that to me is extremely rewarding.
Yeah, and that's another thing I enjoy when I work with you. It seems like you know everybody. I mean, I feel like I've spent a lot of time trying to get to know as many lawyers as possible, but some random name comes up on an email, and you're like, oh yeah, I worked with that guy 4 years ago. I mean, I really feel like you've got to know everybody in the profession.
Well, and while there's a ton of lawyers, it is, especially when you're handling catastrophic cases, or there is a smaller circle of folks you're regularly running into, and I think that's why, I mean, I hope that my reputation with those folks is he's going to fight us hard, but you can trust him. He's honest, and he's not going to be a jerk to you. And I think, and I know when I run into those defense lawyers on the other side, those are the people that I think you really respect.
Sure.
The people that can do it right. We were talking about Scotty Scheffler before we went on, right? It's the people who win, but win right.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And that's what I'd like to. That's sort of the ideal I strive for.
I was telling you this morning, I was listening to Josh Stein's podcast on the way in. He was talking about getting answers in after he files a complaint, and you see the name at the end of the answer, and you can tell immediately if it's going to be a good case or it's going to be a bad case. Like this, a lawyer's a good lawyer. They're going to work hard. They're going to do the right thing. We'll have a good relationship. Or it's that guy that you just don't want to deal with because he's going to be scorched earth or whatever.
Well, and the sad thing is, lawyers got to have a bad reputation. Trial lawyers in particular have a bad reputation, and it's well deserved.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot.
I tried a case years ago, and the defense lawyer, we had a discussion about exchanging stuff before trial, and he hadn't given me anything. I don't have anything. And then he puts up an exhibit. As soon as the first witness gets up, it's pre-marked that he should have given to me.
Right.
And as soon as that witness gets done, I'm like, why didn't you give it to me? Why'd you say you had nothing?
Right.
And he looks me square in the eyes and says, why do you think? Right? Because he thought it gave him an advantage to lie. And I tell clients, often, as you guys know, we don't understand all the dynamics of a case when we're vetting it initially.
It's almost impossible sometimes,
But in cases where it really turns on a client's credibility, and I might have some questions about it, I'm very transparent with clients. I don't represent liars.
Right.
I'm fortunate enough to get to pick my cases, and I don't represent liars. Yep. So if you need a lawyer who's going to lie for you or going to need to tolerate your lies, then go find someone else.
Yeah. I've heard you tell clients, too, that you don't bluff. So if you say you don't do this, we're going to file a lawsuit, then you're going to file a lawsuit. I
think that's really important. I think to your point about like that reputation you develop, I want the defense lawyer to know, Scott says he's doing this. This is what he's doing.
Right.
And I think it not only is the right way, I think, to act, but it also has the effect of, I think, often getting you paid more.
Sure.
Because they're not going to nickel and dime you. They're going to realize, all right, this is his number.
Yep.
And pay it or don't.
Take it serious at least.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they don't pay it, but they at least take a hard look at it. You got anything, Spence?
Yeah, so we kind of hit on it there. We spent a lot of episodes talking about, do's and don'ts with clients. What kind of tips could you give, or do you give to your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the first things I say to everyone is don't be posting stuff on social media about your case.
Yeah,
right?
Just did an episode.
I mean, and they still do it, right? I mean, not all of them, but the reality is especially the younger generations, it's so second nature, they almost can't function without putting it out there.
Yeah.
The thing that's important to keep in mind when you're doing that, and that I stress for everyone, is just understand everything you put out there, the insurance company, their lawyers, is going to not only be taking a handle on, but is going to be manipulating and distorting.
Yeah.
I tried a case years ago. It actually worked out to our benefit, but the client had a significant back issue. And when I was talking to him about the things he loved doing beforehand, because I think that's the thing that's so important. It's not just the medical bills and the medical records and treatment. It's, well, how did it affect your life?
Right.
And he was a avid hiker, loved to hike. And he's like, I just, when I'm talking to him, he's like, well, I used to love to hike and I don't hike anymore. And so one of the things I think is important to keep in mind is in a conversation, you might say, I don't hike anymore.
Right.
But in a deposition, if you say you don't hike anymore, you better not hike at all.
Right.
And so I said to him, I was like, well, let's just be cognizant of, if you're giving a statement to an insurance company or you're sitting for a deposition, that to not be casual with your words when it comes to that. And he was like, yeah, because I do hike occasionally. So what he said is that his depo, when he gets asked that, he says, I used to love to hike. It was my passion, and I still do it sometimes, but I don't do it like I used to. Right. And when I do it, gosh, it hurts for days and weeks. Great. In that case, we get to trial a year or so after his deposition. As you guys know, things move slow.
Very.
And he's on the stand for cross-examination, and the defense lawyer pulls up a Facebook image, a social media image, and it's him hiking.
Yeah.
And he says, this is you hiking, isn't it? And he's like, yeah, that is me. I remember that was a glorious day. It was great. The defense lawyer hadn't even been listening, right? He thought he had said, I never do it.
I don't hike anymore.
In which case, this post on Facebook would have been a case killer. But he had been careful with his words and understood that the way you use words in casual conversation needs to be tempered if you're giving sworn testimony, because there he saved the case. And we won. We got a good verdict. And the defense lawyer sort of had egg on his face when he cross-examined and was like, because my guy's like, yeah, that was 3 months ago. It was an awesome day. We didn't go as far as we typically would. We didn't camp. But put it in context. So I think those are the things that are so important for people to understand is be careful what you put out there, and what you do put out there, understand that you need to be accurate and careful with your words.
Yep. Circle back to something we talked about a few minutes ago. You do a lot of catastrophic claims. So what's different between a catastrophic claim and maybe just kind of let's say a little less serious?
So I'd say for us, most of the cases, if not all the cases we handle, we go into it with the mentality of preparing it for trial. And often a lot of the smaller claims don't need to be tried, right? There's a lot of claims that are just going to, if someone calls me with a smaller case, I say, I've got some aches and pains, but it's not something that's going to necessarily need to be full-on litigated. That's not the kind of thing we handle. We would generally, with the catastrophic cases, we're getting involved where we know there's going to be, depositions taken, experts involved with an eye towards trial. Yeah. And generally speaking, you're going to have a different type of a lawyer on the other side as well. There's sort of the same kind of thing on the defense side. There's lawyers that sort of specialize in more catastrophic death cases. And so to Ben's point, that's why I feel like, having done catastrophic cases for a decade on the plaintiff side and some on the defense side before that you just got to get to know everyone. But I think the main thing for people to know is if you've got a catastrophic case or a death case, to not just call the first person you see on the billboard. Right? Because generally speaking, and this is a broad brush, but generally speaking, if it's a volume shop, they're likely, by that I mean having lots of cases, they're likely looking to resolve your case as efficiently as they can.
Yeah, as quickly as possible.
And if you got a catastrophic case, a quick resolution most likely is not the best resolution. Now, there can be cases, as we've seen, Ben and I just wrapped one up, catastrophic case where there's limited coverage.
Yep.
And those cases, there may be a limit on what you're able to do, but at the same time, you want to make sure you look under every single stone before you conclude that. And I think that's the thing that people that maybe just get sucked up in a vacuum of a volume firm handling lots of cases with a catastrophic case might not get that attention.
Yeah. We've talked about that, just the different buckets to kind of go look in to see if there is insurance coverage or any kind of money available in those buckets. And I agree. Like I said, it's a broad brush, but I feel like if you're dealing with somebody who's got 1,000 cases or somebody who's got 20, they're not going to have the time to look in those buckets.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Along those lines, too, you kind of just touched on it a minute ago, but if somebody is looking for a lawyer, instead of going to the first billboard or TV commercial they see, what do you recommend they look for in a lawyer? Are there any questions you would tell them to ask? That type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I think there's really two things that are important. And if it was like a family member of mine looking for a lawyer, I think the first thing is like get to know the lawyer, like actually meet them. Don't just sign up, because if you call some volume shop, you're talking to a case clerk or
and maybe somebody different every time you call.
Yeah, and I think, like, for example, here, if you're here in Cumming, you guys are right here on the square. Right. Come sit down with you guys and meet you in person, see the kind of people you are, make sure you're comfortable. If you got a catastrophic or death case, you want to make sure the person fighting for you is someone not just who's a lawyer and willing to take the case, but a person who you believe in and believes in you. So I think that for any catastrophic case, I think it's important to start with, and maybe sometimes an in-person meeting isn't feasible but a detailed discussion with those lawyers to make sure you believe in them, you trust the kind of people they are, and then the second thing is that they have the expertise or are able to collaborate with someone that has the expertise. Because I think, and I think an easy way to sort of filter that out is often to say, okay, well, tell me about your results, right? And sometimes you'll see things where it'll say, we settled this case for X number,
right?
It doesn't really tell you a whole lot, right? Because it could be a $10 million case, they settle for $7 million.
Yeah,
it sounds great, but they got. So I think ultimately, you want to make sure you've got a lawyer who's got an established record of getting good results, and that can be in the form of settlements. It can be in the form of verdicts. I think verdicts are often easier to tell because okay, they went the distance. But I think one of the things I really respect about you guys and a lot of the lawyers that I collaborate with is, you guys, to y'all's credit, y'all. And I think it's funny because like the lawyers that are referring lawyers that I work with that I've become good friends with all have a sort of a similar trait, and you guys do too, which is you're always putting your client first.
Sure.
Right? It might not be in y'all's financial interest to work with me on a case because you're splitting the fee.
Right.
But lawyers like you and some of my other friends that are referring lawyers understand that our duty is to the client.
Yeah.
And you guys, I think, are really good about realizing, hey, there's some cases where we might be able to, if there's limited insurance, I think about some of the ones we've talked about recently where you don't even bring me in. We'll just talk about it,
right?
Pitch it, see can you get it resolved for the limits of the insurance, and if you can't, then collaborate on it. And so, I think with someone who has a catastrophic case, they need to make sure that they're turning to folks like y'all who they know they can trust. That's going to put their interest first, even if it means your firm makes less.
Right. No, I mean you're absolutely right. It may not be the most lucrative on our end, but if it's something that we either haven't done before or need your expertise in a certain area, then sure, bring you in. And if it benefits the client, then it's a win-win. I mean, I tell, maybe this will change one day, but I tell most of my clients, I'm not going to retire off this case. Neither are you, probably. But I want to go do the best job that I possibly can to get you the most money that I possibly can. So that when we're done, you look back and say, okay, Ben did a good job.
Well, and I think the thing is, too, is doing this like we do, is it's not about that one single case. It's about making sure that's the only case that client has, right? And I tell clients, really, this is your one and only case.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, hopefully. That's a good point. But it's not mine. But at the same time, if we're doing our job right, then those folks are going to go out and say, gosh, Ben and Spencer were just tremendous lawyers, but just good people who I know without a doubt put my interests first. And I think if you do that right over time, it's just a snowball, right? And I think that ultimately that's what I respect about how y'all handle things and how we strive to handle things too.
Now, when Spencer and I first got started, I told him, 7-8 years ago, a guy I went to law school with sent me a client. He didn't do personal injury work, so he sends me this client that had been in a wreck. His name was Reggie. And I can literally trace back probably 60 or 70% of my clientele from Reggie just because I gave him 100% and he referred people, and it's just, like you said, snowballed, and everybody came from Reggie.
Oh, and there's nothing better than having like a client come in from a former client where they're like, I've got this guy, he's a former barber down in Muscogee County, and I tried a case for his nephew was killed years ago. I tried the case for him, and he and I just became buddies. We were from totally different walks of life. Right. He had this little barber shop in downtown Columbus. I hear from him still a decade, not quite a decade later, regularly. And I'll get calls. Oh, Bobby told me to give you a call. Great.
Perfect.
And I love that because
absolutely.
It is. It's to your point. It's like, all right, yes, the monetary recoveries are we need that. This is the job. We got to pay bills, but changing people's lives in a positive way that wants them to tell others about you, that's the biggest compliment there is.
I mean, or even just taking the frustration of the experience away from. I mean, like you said, they didn't choose to be here. This is their case. Hopefully, the only one they ever have to deal with, and it's overwhelming. Oftentimes, they don't know which way to turn, where to go, and if you can just take that frustration, make it a little easier for them, then it goes a long way. And on the point of Muscogee County, I think I've told you, there's a restaurant down there called Plucked Up, and they have a dish called the chicken coop. So if you ever get another case down there, I'm going with you so we can have breakfast.
I love Muscogee County. That's a good county to try a case in as a plaintiff's lawyer, I'll tell you.
And it's got great breakfast.
Yeah.
What else you got, Spence?
Well, I was going to see maybe some advice for other lawyers in the injury realm, or maybe just lawyers in general. What do you think are some things that make your firm successful, and what kind of community involvement do you guys have, things like that?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, I read a book years ago that Shiver put me onto, but I think really the key is having the right people in the right chairs, right? And I think that's something that with any business is important, but I think particularly with a small law firm is keeping your eyes open. We've all got different strengths and skills, even outside of practice and law, just run a business, right? And so I think one of the things that has made us successful is we sort of acknowledge, like, all right, I'm not as good as you at this or that when it comes to the business or type of case or whatever. And both as it relates to our lawyers and our paralegals and our support staff. And so I think that's really important, is always looking at, are the right people in the right chairs?
Yeah.
And listening to them too, right? I mean, I think our hope, we just celebrated 10 years with Jessica, my paralegal.
It was phenomenal.
I think she's the best paralegal in town. But she's been with me a decade. And I think one of the reasons that we have this successful relationship, in addition to her doing great work, is we have an open dialogue, right? We talk, we listen. And I think that's one of the things, and not just any small business, but that communication is key. And it's something that can be hard to facilitate at times. And I think you got to put your pride aside at some times, right? And make sure that people understand, like, hey, you know, I might be your boss technically, but it's an open door, and I want your opinion, and I want to make sure you're happy.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. You know, and I think as it relates to kind of community involvement for us, and again, it was one of the reasons why I sort of wanted, when I was looking at firms, I sort of think like a stock. Like when I hitched my wagon to Jeff and Allen more than a decade ago, I was had a good job at a big firm paying me well.
Right.
I didn't want to be on that track anymore. And I wanted people who saw the world similar to I did and understood that, like, we're lawyers and we have skills, but we need to make sure that we're pouring back into people and into organizations. And Jeff and Allen have a similar vision to me in that regard. And so we, from day one, have been very active in making sure we identify organizations and charities that are important to us and that are serving people and pouring them. And so, like, you know, there's Murphy Harp's Children's Home is one over in Cedartown. I've been on the board on for probably 7-8 years, and it's a great organization that we used to take the firm over there once a year, and we've all been active with them. And Atlanta Legal Aid, I think we want to make sure that we sort of view it as a responsibility. That, you know, if you're in a position to advocate for folks and turn that into financial success, so then you got a responsibility to make sure you're pouring back into the community and organizations that are serving the less fortunate.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Looking back on your career, what advice would you give to lawyers that are either new to the injury world or just still in it, just like we are? You know, what do you think are good things for them to focus on to be successful?
Wow. You know, I think that probably depends on sort of the path they want to be on. I think for all lawyers, the thing that I did early on in my career is I always sort of looked like, not where am I right now, but the path that I'm on right now, is it taking me somewhere I want to be in 5 years? And if it's not, how do I change that? And I think that served me well in that, you know, through my defense career, you know, got to sort of the top of the defense side and then decided I'm no longer on a path that's taking me where I want to be. I don't want to be this big firm partner. And then actually when I joined Jeff and Allen, they said, I heard they were looking to hire, and I was sort of taken back because Jeff hadn't said anything to me, and he and I were friends. And he said, well, we're not looking to hire someone like you. We need like a grunt. This is our first hire. We want to hire someone who wants to do the stuff we don't want to do. Right. And we're not paying what you're making at a big firm, you know, just about to make partner. And I said, I don't care. You can pay me whatever you want to pay me. It can be a dead end, because I had realized at that point in time, the path I'm on was not a path that was going to lead me to somewhere I wanted to be in 5 years. I didn't want to be trying cases in San Francisco, California, and then Chicago, and then New York, like I was doing, and have my kids growing up with me gone. Yep. And so, so I think that's the thing, is you got to figure out, all right, well, am I on a path I want to be on? And then once I shifted to Jeff and Allen, I realized, okay, well, the path I'm on now is at least put me in a position to teach me the skills from guys that I respect and that I know are elite at what they do.
But great lawyers.
And then I'll go do my own thing. And after a couple years of us cranking together, they were like, that's not happening. You're staying here, right? And so I think the thing that's important for young lawyers to do is have that vision forward. Don't get just stuck looking down, because I think there's so many lawyers that get stuck, say, well, it pays the bills. Yep. I don't hate it, so I'm just going to keep doing it. And they just chug along. Next thing you know, you've been doing it for 40 years, and you're like, gosh, I wish I'd pivoted.
Yep.
And I think you got to be not afraid to pivot. Now, you got to be smart financially in order to give yourself that cushion to pivot, right? If I had been living above my means, or when I was a defense lawyer or whatever, or so hooked to how much I was making, I couldn't have done that. And so I think those are the important things, not just for lawyers, but any young person starting their career, is to figure out, like, where do I want to go? How do I get there? And don't expect that you're going to get there. Like, that's why I say 5 years, because like the young lawyers that come work for us, make it clear, like, look, there's no guaranteed partnership on the plaintiff side. Right. You know, this isn't like you sit in a chair and 7 years later you're a partner. This is, if you come in and distinguish yourself, well, then we'll see what happens. But I think young lawyers need to understand, especially if you're not starting your own shop. Y'all would know better than me about coming out, and I always respect lawyers that came right out and did their own thing by themselves. Yeah. But if you're not doing that and you're on someone else's shop, I think it's a matter of keeping an eye out 5 years down the road. Am I on a path that I want to be at? And if not, how do I get there?
I tell you, a trap that I probably fell into is, back when I first got started, 5 years seemed like an eternity, and 5 years went by in the blink of an eye. I mean, literally, now 10 years, 11 years have gone by in the blink of an eye, and here we are. So I'm trying to figure out where the next month go. But I think that's fantastic advice.
All right. So we'll do some quick fire questions.
All right.
Yeah. Lighten it up a little bit before we close it out.
All right. Okay. First one, big one. Chevy or Ford?
I got my Ford F-150 out front there, so it's Ford.
Might have answered this one earlier off camera, but Starbucks or Dunkin'?
So as we talked about as I was coming over here today, if I had to choose between those two, I would say Dunkin', but a little plug for the coffee shop across the street community that I had today. Yeah. I love going to local spots. We got so many great local spots here in Cumming. But
I should have mentioned that. Yeah, Scott's a local lawyer as well. He lives in Forsyth County.
I live up here. I'm jealous of the commute you guys have, where I drove over from my house. It was 10 minutes, whereas I'm normally going into Atlanta. So y'all got it good up here.
Tiger or Jack?
Tiger. That's easy.
Favorite Brave of all time?
Wow, that's a complex one. I mean, the first name that comes to mind would be Dale Murphy.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the last book you read?
Probably Blink. This is another one that's Shiver. I don't read a ton. I like the idea of reading, but I don't really do it a whole lot.
Yeah.
But Shiver's always put me on to stuff. Have y'all read Blink?
No.
It's Malcolm Gladwell.
Okay. Yeah.
It's really about the power of first impressions. I think it's something that's good for trial lawyers to read. And Jeff had mentioned it to me. I mean, embarrassingly, that was probably is it more than 5 years ago?
Okay.
Or 5 year thing.
It's a long book.
Yeah. I read it more than 5 years. I haven't picked it up since.
If you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be and why?
Dinner with any historical figure.
I got asked this one. It took me a while to come up with
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind, just because I just watched Manhunt. Have y'all seen Manhunt? Mm-hmm. It's on Apple TV. It's about Lincoln assassination, a hunt for Booth afterwards. So Lincoln comes to mind. It just is. No. I just think Lincoln and what he went through and how his steady leadership through a trying time would be. I think it's hard to think of someone that would be more interesting to sit down with and have dinner with than him.
I think it's a solid answer.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your favorite thing to do at the end of a stressful day?
Favorite thing to do. I mean, the reality is I'm generally getting home, changing, going for a jog to try to decompress. I don't really enjoy that, but I do it. Gosh, I mean, if I had my pick, it'd probably be to go play 9 holes. But generally speaking, that doesn't work for my time.
Yeah, no, I get that. Favorite vacation spot?
I would say, gosh, there's so many great places. I generally favor the mountains over the coast. I love them both, but the mountains. And I think it's hard to beat Colorado, Montana. I'm going to Wyoming for a fishing trip in a month or so. Just so many beautiful places out there. Currently, Colorado's probably my top spot.
Bet. Favorite golf course you've ever played?
I would say probably Camargo. It's a course outside Cincinnati. It's a top 50 course. My best friend from law school is up there, and it's just feels like going back in time. There's no development around it. It's
That's awesome.
It's just an old school, neat old course.
Best concert you've ever seen?
Best concert.
I threw that one in because you just got back.
I did just get back from Red Rocks. We saw Need to Breathe at Red Rocks. I would say Need to Breathe is the best venue for sure.
Or Red Rocks.
Excuse me, Red Rocks is the best venue for sure. I think this concert was not their best show. We saw Tyler Childers there in the fall. That was really cool. I guess I would put Childers at Red Rocks as my top one right now.
Solid choice.
Yeah.
What's a skill or hobby you picked up recently?
A recent skill or hobby? Wow, that's hard. Sadly, I don't know that I'm developing new skills at this point.
So I'll give you one. When we were skiing a couple of months ago and I ran into you, fell just perfectly.
That hurt.
That was a good skill there.
It was like I got shy. I was telling that story recently, actually. He ran right over the back of my skis. Yeah. I had my earbuds in, so I couldn't hear him coming.
Yep.
And it went. That's a good thing we wear helmets down, or that would have been a concussion.
Just tuck and roll. He does excellent execution.
Yeah, I don't know that I have any new skills or hobbies. That's probably a good challenge to develop something new, but I'm sort of set in my ways. I got the same hobbies that I struggle with. I'm still trying to be decent at golf. That's
what's one item you can't live without?
One item I can't live without. I guess I'm looking out the window at my truck. I guess I would say my truck. I mean, I'm not sure.
That's what I said as well.
Yeah, you know.
Do you have a favorite quote or mantra that you live by?
You know, I don't know that I like nothing that I think of daily. I think if I was to try to, I treat others as you want to be treated. You know, is probably what I generally try to do.
And then before we move on to our last one, we got another one. So, what if you spot Ben 10 shots in a round of golf? Could he beat you?
Oh, I would say if he gives up triathlons, yes. But until he does that, no, I don't think it's happening.
10 shot, all right.
I don't think
That's a bet.
And then the last one is favorite podcast.
Favorite podcast. So, because I commute from coming to, other than the Bettis Musgrove Show.
Perfect plug.
I mean,
that's what we're shooting for.
Next to that one, I commute every day not every day, but 4 days a week probably from my house and coming to Buckhead. So my routine is I listen to a sermon in the morning on the way in because it's about 40 minutes, my commute, perfect time. And then I come back and I listen to a college football or a golf podcast. I would say currently my favorite podcast would probably, I'm really enjoying this Chasing Scratch. Have y'all listened to that?
No.
It's
golf podcast.
It's two guys like our age who are trying to be scratch golfers, and they have been for 6 years now. So they're not doing it successfully, but it's
maybe I should listen.
It's just two guys sitting around and talk. It's good. They have a good banter. I'd probably put that as my favorite one currently.
So I heard some statistic the other day that said you've got a better chance of hitting the lottery than you do breaking 80.
Wow.
I guess just worldwide. People,
Okay.
The amount of people that play golf versus.
Okay.
I mean, it seems. I mean, I've never broken 80. So
I think you're capable of breaking. If you give up triathlons, if you've seen him drive, he can drive a golf ball a mile.
my body's giving up on me. So triathlons they may be done. All right. Well, that's a good place to wrap it. Appreciate you joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it.
As always, find us on Facebook, Instagram, at Bettis Musgrove or at bettismusgrove.com. Do you guys have any social media or website?
Shiverhamilton.com is
Okay.
our website, and you can get links to everything.
Cool.
There.
Go look Scott up. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy. God bless.